The afternoon fog rolled through Pacific Heights like a silk scarf being drawn across the city, soft and inevitable. Juliet Morrison stood at her kitchen window, watching it blur the edges of the Golden Gate Bridge in the distance. The Carrara marble countertop felt cool under her fingertips as she waited for the electric kettle to boil, Earl Grey time, as it had been every day for the past 15 years, ever since she'd left the gallery. She'd been thinking about Monet's series paintings lately, how the artist captured the same cathedral at different times of day, each painting revealing something new about the unchanging stone. Marriage, she thought, was like that, the same subject viewed through shifting light. 35 years of observing Julian Morrison, and she believed she knew every angle, every shadow. The kettle clicked off. 3 o'clock precisely. From his second-floor office she could hear Julian's voice, that familiar baritone with its hint of Boston breeding that had first charmed her at a gallery opening decades ago. Another client call. Since becoming CEO of Baytech Solutions, he'd turned their Victorian into a satellite office, conducting business from behind the mahogany door of what had once been Daniel's playroom. She arranged the tea tray with the same curatorial precision she'd once applied to gallery exhibitions. The Wedgwood cup and saucer, 2 shortbread biscuits on a small plate, a silver spoon that had belonged to Julian's grandmother. The familiar ritual soothed her, each object in its designated place, creating a composition as refined as any still life. The charity gala planning folder lay open on the breakfast nook table. As head of the decorations committee for the Children's Hospital benefit, she had color swatches to approve, centerpiece designs to review. But the fog had brought a restlessness with it, a sensation like standing before a painting and sensing something askew in the brushwork, though unable to identify exactly what. She touched her pearl earrings, anniversary gift, year 20, and decided to bring Julian his tea. He'd mentioned an important call this afternoon, something about a new acquisition. She could at least save him the trip downstairs. The Victorians' original stairs creaked in their familiar pattern as she ascended, the sound a kind of music she'd long ago memorized. Through the door, Julian's voice carried on, warm and encouraging. She paused, not wanting to interrupt. Understand completely. The tech industry can be brutal, especially for young women. But you have real talent, Madison. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Madison. Juliet's hand stilled on the doorknob. Madison Chen, Daniel's ex-girlfriend. The girl who'd broken their son's heart 2 years ago, claiming she needed to find herself before settling down. The girl with the infectious laugh and the peculiar habit of always wearing something pink, as if she'd never quite grown out of a childhood preference. The transition will be challenging, Julian continued, his voice taking on that mentoring tone he used with junior executives. But I have some connections that might help. Why don't we discuss it more on Thursday? Same time? Juliet knocked gently and entered. Julian sat at his desk, the afternoon light from the bay window creating a halo effect around his silver hair. His computer screen showed a Zoom window, and there was Madison radiant at 27, a pink silk blouse visible against what looked like a bookshelf background. But it wasn't Madison that caught Juliet's trained eye. Behind Julian, draped over his leather reading chair with the casualness of ownership, hung a pink hoodie. Not just any hoodie, Juliet recognized the distinctive Victoria's Secret logo, the same style Madison had worn to their last family dinner before the breakup. And on the bookshelf, partially visible behind Julian's shoulder, sat a framed photograph. Madison in graduation regalia, UC Berkeley, class of 2016. The same photo that used to sit on Daniel's nightstand. Oh, Juliet. Julian's hand moved to his tie, Italian silk, the nervous gesture so subtle most wouldn't notice. Perfect timing. I was just wrapping up with Madison. On the screen, Madison's smile flickered. Hi, Mrs. Morrison. Julian's been so helpful with my career transition. How thoughtful of him, Juliet said, setting the tea tray on the side table with steady hands. Her gallery training served her well. Never let them see you've noticed the forgery. Daniel mentioned you'd left your marketing position. She's exploring options in product management, Julian interjected quickly. It's the least we can do for someone who almost became family. You know how tough the job market is right now. Almost became family. The phrase hung in the air like the fog outside, obscuring more than it revealed. Of course, Juliet said, her voice maintaining the same measured tone she'd perfected during gallery negotiations. Don't let your tea get cold, darling. She left them to finish their call, closing the door with a soft click. In the hallway, she stood perfectly still, her hand pressed against the wallpaper, E. William Morris, authentic, installed during the 2005 restoration. Through the door, she heard Madison's laugh, bright and familiar, followed by Julian's deeper chuckle. The sound of it, intimate, unguarded, made her touch her wedding ring, a habit she'd developed during stressful exhibition openings. Half an hour later, as evening approached, Juliet found herself in their walk-in closet, ostensibly choosing an outfit for tomorrow's hospital board meeting. But her fingers kept returning to Julian's section, running along the sleeves of his suits like a conservator checking for damage. When had he started buying new shirts? The Tom Ford cologne on his dresser, Oud Wood, according to the label, was nearly empty, though she couldn't recall when he'd purchased it. Such an unusual scent, she thought. Younger. Something a woman might choose for a man. Her mind catalogued these details with the same systematic approach she'd once applied to provenance research. The Tuesday evening client dinners that had become routine over the past 6 months. The Thursday afternoon mentoring calls that required a closed door. His newfound interest in contemporary music. Keeping current with industry trends. He'd explained when she'd found him listening to Billie Eilish. She sat on the small ottoman in the closet, surrounded by 35 years of accumulated elegance. Each piece told a story. The St. John suit from Daniel's high school graduation, the Oscar de la Renta gown from Julian's promotion celebration, the simple black dress from her father's funeral, a life curated as carefully as any exhibition, each memory precisely framed and labeled. But now, staring at Julian's new cologne, she wondered what else she'd failed to notice. In her gallery days, she'd prided herself on spotting forgeries, the wrong pigment for the period, brush strokes that didn't match the artist's known technique. Had she become so comfortable with the familiar composition of her marriage that she'd stopped really looking? A memory surfaced, Julian, 2 years ago, after Daniel had called sobbing about the breakup. We should stay in touch with Madison, he'd said, adjusting his tie in that telltale way. She's a sweet girl. This is probably harder on her than she's letting on. Juliet had thought it generous at the time, this concern for the girl who'd hurt their son. She'd even admired Julian's capacity for forgiveness, his understanding that young people sometimes needed space to grow. Now, sitting among their carefully preserved past, she wondered if forgiveness had been quite the right word. After dinner, salmon with dill, Julian's favorite, conversation about the Rothko retrospective at SF MoMA, Juliet stepped onto the front porch for air. The fog had thickened, muffling the city sounds and creating an island of quiet around their Victorian. Mrs. Kim was tending to her roses next door, armed with pruning shears and wearing her late husband's Berkeley engineering fleece. "Evening, dear," Mrs. Kim called out, her voice carrying the hint of a Korean accent that emerged when she was tired. "Those charity gala plans keeping you busy?" "Always something," Juliet replied, grateful for the distraction. She walked to the property line, where a low fence allowed for easy conversation. "Your roses are looking beautiful." "The security camera helps," Mrs. Kim said, pointing to a small device nestled among the eaves. "I can check on them even when I'm inside." Amazing what technology can do now. "My husband," she paused, the way she always did when mentioning him, though he'd been gone 3 years. "He was always going on about digital footprints. Worked at Google for 20 years, you know. Said everything leaves a trace online." "Julian's the same way with his video calls," Juliet said, keeping her tone casual. "Always worried about backgrounds and lighting." Mrs. Kim snorted. "Men and their vanity, though I'll tell you what my husband always said, it's not the show they put on that matters, it's what they forget to hide. He used to record all his important calls. The cloud saves everything these days, dear," she said, mimicking her late husband's professorial tone. called it his insurance policy. Never know when you might need to review what was really said. They chatted a few minutes more about the neighborhood watch meeting, the new couple moving in down the street. But Juliet's mind had snagged on Mrs. Kim's words. The cloud saves everything. Later that evening, Juliet sat in the den, trying to focus on her book, a biography of Peggy Guggenheim she'd been meaning to finish. Julian was back in his office, another call, this time with Shanghai. The house felt too large around her, each room holding its silence like a held breath. Her phone rang. Daniel. "Hi, sweetheart," she said, genuinely pleased to hear his voice. Her son called regularly, but his shifts at UCSF often meant days of missed connections. "Mom!" He sounded excited, the slight stutter that emerged when he was emotional just barely noticeable. "I just got off the phone with Dad. He thinks, well, he's been talking to Madison." Juliet's fingers tightened on the phone. "Has he?" "She's been asking about me, apparently. Dad thinks she might be ready to try again. He's been amazing, Mom. Really going to bat for me. He says she just needed time to figure out what she wanted, and maybe that's me." The hope in his voice was almost unbearable. Juliet closed her eyes, saw again that pink hoodie draped over Julian's chair, the graduation photo positioned just so. "That's wonderful, darling," she heard herself say. "Your father has always been very supportive." "He really has. He even offered to talk to her more, feel her out about getting coffee with me. Casual, you know. No pressure. No pressure." Juliet thought of Madison's bright smile on that computer screen, Julian's hand moving to his tie. "You know, Mom, I'm really lucky. Not everyone has parents who'd stay friends with their ex, especially after everything. Dad says Madison's brilliant, but just needs guidance. These young people don't understand corporate politics. That's what he told me." The exact same words Julian had used on his call. Juliet felt something shift in her chest, a painting revealing itself to be a clever copy. "I should let you go," Daniel said. "Early shift tomorrow. Love you, Mom." "Love you too, sweetheart." She sat in the gathering darkness, phone still in her hand. Through the ceiling, she could hear Julian's footsteps, the familiar pattern of his pacing during calls. 35 years of those footsteps. Every morning, same breakfast, each steel-cut oats with blueberries. Every night, same kiss on the forehead before sleep. When had it become performance? Julian appeared in the doorway, silhouetted against the hall light. "Good call with Shanghai. The merger's moving forward." He moved into the room, bent to kiss her forehead. There it was, reliable as clockwork. "I gave Daniel some encouragement about Madison. Poor kid's been moping for 2 years." "How generous of you," Juliet said, the words perfectly neutral, a title card in a gallery providing just the facts. "She's a sweet girl. They were good together. Sometimes people just need time to grow." He was already moving toward the stairs, toward their bedroom, toward the continuation of patterns laid down over decades. Juliet remained in the dark a moment longer, then rose and followed. In their bedroom, Julian was already in bed, scrolling through his phone with the focused attention he once reserved for her. She performed her evening ritual, face cream, the pearl earrings placed in their velvet box, reading glasses set on the nightstand. Each gesture automatic, practiced, perfect. "Julian," she said, slipping beneath the covers. He didn't look up. "Do you remember the Vermeer exhibition? The one where they discovered the forgery?" Now he glanced at her. "The one in Boston? Years ago? I was thinking about it today. How the fake hung there for months, everyone admiring it, no one noticing. It was only when they looked at it with different technology, infrared, I think, that they saw what was underneath. The real painting, covered over." Julian set down his phone. "Why on earth were you thinking about that?" "No reason. The fog, perhaps. It makes everything look different." He kissed her forehead again, the second performance of the evening, and turned off his light. Within minutes, his breathing deepened into sleep. But Juliet lay awake, staring at the ceiling. its familiar cracks and shadows transformed in the darkness. As the house settled into darkness around them, she thought about Mrs. Kim's husband, recording everything, leaving digital footprints in the cloud. She thought about Madison's pink hoodie, marking territory in her husband's office. She thought about Daniel's hope, built on a foundation of his father's lies. Tomorrow, she would make Earl Grey at 3 o'clock. She would smile at her husband of 35 years. She would attend her charity meeting and discuss centerpieces and color schemes, playing the role of the contented Pacific Heights matron she'd perfected over decades. But tonight, in the darkness, she finally stood and walked to the doorway of Julian's office. Moonlight through the bay window illuminated the pink hoodie, still draped over the leather chair like a flag of surrender or conquest. Her reflection in the darkened computer monitor showed a woman she didn't recognize, someone who had just realized her life was a gallery of forgeries. Tomorrow, she would make Earl Grey at 3 o'clock. She would smile at her husband of 35 years, and she would begin to learn the truth about what happened when she wasn't watching. 2 weeks had passed since that April afternoon, when Juliet first glimpsed the pink hoodie in Julian's office. 2 weeks of watching her husband leave for his mentoring sessions, with the serene confidence of a man who believed his secrets were safe. 2 weeks of perfecting her mask, the devoted wife who noticed nothing, suspected nothing, knew nothing. Thursday morning brought an unexpected visitor. Juliet was arranging white roses in the kitchen when she heard Daniel's key in the lock. Her son appeared in the doorway, still in his scrubs from a night shift, carrying a paper bag that smelled of sourdough and butter. "Tartine," he announced, setting the bag on the marble counter. "Got your favorite Eat morning bun with orange zest." She kissed his stubbled cheek, noting the exhaustion beneath his smile. "You didn't have to stop, sweetheart. You must be dead on your feet." "Wanted to see you." Daniel collapsed into the breakfast nook, his tall frame folding into the cushioned bench. "Besides, I have news." "Dad's been incredible, Mom. Really incredible." Juliet's hand stilled on the coffee pot. "Oh?" "These sessions with Madison Dad says she's been asking about me. Mentioned things only someone who still cared would remember." His green eyes, so like hers, sparkled with hope. "She kept my old Northwestern hoodie. That means something, right? You don't keep your ex's college sweatshirt unless—" The coffee maker gurgled, drowning out the scream building in Juliet's throat. She knew exactly which hoodie he meant. Navy blue with white lettering, worn soft from years of wash cycles. She'd folded it herself countless times during his undergraduate years. "That's wonderful, darling," she managed, setting a steaming mug before him. Daniel wrapped his hands around the ceramic, oblivious to his mother's rigid spine. "Dad thinks she's scared. Says career-focused women like Madison sometimes panic when things get too real. But he's working on helping her see that ambition and love aren't mutually exclusive." Ambition, Juliet thought, remembering Julian's home office, the pink fabric draped across his leather chair. Is that what they're calling it now? "I'm thinking of proposing on our anniversary," Daniel continued, exhaustion making him more talkative than usual. "July 4th. Symbolic, right? Independence Day, but together. Dad's helping me look at rings." The morning bun turned to ash in Juliet's mouth. Julian was helping their son plan a proposal to the woman he was fucking. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. "You need sleep," she said gently, touching Daniel's shoulder. "Take the guest room upstairs. I'll wake you for your shift tonight." After Daniel trudged upstairs, Juliet stood alone in her pristine kitchen, gripping the counter until her knuckles went white. Then she picked up her phone and texted Mrs. Kim. "Are you free this afternoon? I need that computer help we discussed." That afternoon, over Korean tea that tasted of roasted barley, Juliet sat in Mrs. Kim's apartment on Pacific Avenue. The space was smaller than her own home, but infinitely warmer. Walls covered with photographs of grandchildren, the air rich with the scent of kimchi jjigae simmering on the stove. "My late husband was paranoid about data," Mrs. Kim explained, pulling a laptop toward them. "Career NSA, you understand. Taught me everything, how to find what's hidden, how to hide what's found." Her weathered fingers moved across the keyboard with surprising agility. "Now, Zoom cloud recordings? People think they're private, but they're not. Not if you know where to look. She guided Juliet through the steps, accessing Zoom through a browser instead of the app, navigating to settings, finding the cloud recordings tab. The trick is the hidden folders. People create them thinking they're secure, but the direct link still works if you know the structure. Mrs. Kim turned the screen toward Juliet. See? Your husband has a subfolder here, M Career Consultations, 47 recordings. The older woman's face remained carefully neutral, but her eyes were knowing. I'll write down the steps. You can access this from any computer. Juliet stared at the list of recordings, each one dated, time-stamped, some lasting over an hour. Mrs. Kim, Drink your tea, dear, Mrs. Kim interrupted, rising to check the stove. It's getting cold. Alone in her office that evening, a room she rarely used, preferring the warmth of the kitchen or living room, Juliet opened her laptop with trembling fingers. Daniel was sleeping upstairs, Julian at his downtown office for late meetings. The house felt different in its silence, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. She clicked the first recording, dated 2 weeks after Daniel had asked for reconciliation advice. The screen filled with two faces she knew well, Julian, his silver hair gleaming in his office light, and Madison, her doctorate in psychology, apparently useless in detecting the predator across from her. Madison's voice filled the room. Daniel's sweet but so predictable. Saturday farmers markets, Sunday brunches, missionary position on Wednesday nights. You understand ambition, Julian. He just wants to be comfortable. Age means nothing when minds connect like ours, Julian responded, his voice dropping to the register Juliet recognized from their own early courtship. You're extraordinary, Madison. Daniel couldn't possibly appreciate what you are. Juliet's hand shook, spilling Earl Grey across the desk. She grabbed tissues, mopping mechanically while Madison's laugh tinkled through the speakers, the same laugh that had charmed them at countless family dinners. The funny thing is, playing the heartbroken ex is easier than I expected, Madison continued. A few tears, some wistful sighing, and he actually thinks I'm pining for him. Poor Daniel. The recording continued, their voices shifting from professional to intimate, discussing things that made Juliet's stomach turn. She clicked to another recording, then another, each one revealing new depths of betrayal. Madison mocking Daniel's romantic gestures, Julian offering to fund her private practice, the two of them laughing about the therapy sessions Daniel believed were happening. As midnight passed into Friday, Juliet moved to the master bedroom, laptop balanced on the duvet she'd shared with Julian for 35 years. She'd switched from Zoom recordings to their shared Google Calendar, finding entries labeled M Special Consultation that aligned perfectly with Daniel's 12-hour hospital shifts. The credit card statements told their own story. Ritz-Carlton charges on Tuesday afternoons, a Tiffany & Company purchase on April 15th, the very day she'd first seen the pink hoodie. She cross-referenced dates, building a timeline that made her physically ill. March 2nd, 2021, the day the affair began. The exact day Daniel had come to them, eyes red from crying, asking for advice on winning Madison back. The pattern was meticulous. Tuesdays and Thursdays when Daniel worked. Luxury hotels within walking distance of Julian's office. Expensive gifts that appeared nowhere in their joint accounts, charged instead to Julian's business card. She found herself thinking like the literature professor she'd once been, analyzing the narrative structure of their deception. The dramatic irony of Daniel's hope, the hubris of Julian's confidence, Madison as the ambitious ingenue, and herself, what was her role? The oblivious wife? The final girl in a horror film who discovers the killer has been inside the house all along? Friday dawned foggy and cold, marine layer thick against the windows. Juliet hadn't slept, but her exhaustion had transformed into something crystalline and sharp. She heard Julian's footsteps on the stairs, his cheerful whistling of some jazz standard. "Morning, darling," he said, entering the bedroom already dressed in a Tom Ford suit. Daniel texted, "He's planning something special for Madison. I'm thinking of suggesting the Fairmont, where we got engaged, remember?" the Fairmont where he'd proposed to her in 1985, young lawyers dizzy with possibility, where he was now suggesting their son propose to his mistress. "How thoughtful," Juliet said, rising to kiss his cheek. His cologne, the same creed he'd worn for decades, made her stomach turn, but her lips remained steady. "I'll make your omelet." In the kitchen, she moved through practiced motions: 3 eggs, Gruyere, chives from her garden. Julian sat at the breakfast nook exactly where Daniel had sat hours before, reading the Financial Times on his iPad. "You seem tired," he observed without looking up. "Everything all right?" "Just thinking about the hospital benefit," she lied smoothly. "The committee wants me to increase the fundraising goal. You'll manage. You always do." As Julian ate, making occasional sounds of appreciation, Juliet's phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Kim. "Did you find what you needed, dear?" She typed back, "Yes. Thank you." "Sometimes women must be warriors in silk dresses," came the reply. After Julian left, trailing promises about working late again, Juliet returned to her laptop. She created a new folder, encrypted and password protected, evidence_backup. Into it went everything: recordings, credit card statements, calendar screenshots, transcripts she'd made of the most damning conversations. Then she opened a new document and typed, "Divorce Attorney Research." But as her fingers hovered over the keyboard, she found herself thinking of Daniel upstairs, sleeping off his night shift, dreaming of proposals and reconciliation, of the Fairmont Hotel, where her own dreams had begun, of 35 years of morning coffee, shared newspapers, the fiction of a faithful marriage. She deleted the document. Not yet. Not until she understood the full scope of what she was facing. Madison's motivation was clear: boredom, ambition, the thrill of taking what belonged to another woman. But Julian? After 35 years, who was this man who could orchestrate his son's heartbreak while eating omelets she cooked with love? Juliet closed the laptop and walked to the window. Dawn was breaking over San Francisco Bay, painting the water silver and gold. Somewhere in the city, Daniel was saving lives in the ER, planning his proposal, believing in love. Somewhere else, Madison was perhaps looking at the diamond earrings Julian bought her on Juliet's anniversary. And here, in the house where she'd raised her son, hosted countless dinners, built what she thought was a life, Juliet Morrison began planning its demolition. She opened her phone and typed a single search: "How to destroy someone who thinks they're invincible." The first result was about corporate hostile takeovers. Perfect. The last Sunday in May arrived with thick fog that turned the Golden Gate invisible, as if San Francisco itself was keeping secrets. Juliet Morrison stood at her kitchen window, watching the gray world outside while Julian hummed behind her, making his special French press coffee, the same ritual he'd performed every Sunday for 35 years. "Let's do brunch at Foreign Cinema," he suggested, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. She felt his wedding ring cold against her skin through her silk blouse. "Weather's perfect for their heated patio." "That sounds lovely," she said, leaning back into him with practiced ease. Her phone, hidden in her pocket, was already recording. The app Mrs. Kim had recommended, Voice Memo Pro, could run for hours undetected, uploading everything to a cloud folder Julian would never think to check. She wore his favorite sundress, the yellow one with tiny flowers that he'd bought her in Carmel 10 years ago. She laughed at his jokes about their neighbor's ridiculous topiary attempts. She held his hand across the restaurant table while he talked about quarterly projections, and when his phone buzzed and he excused himself for a bathroom break that lasted 12 minutes, she simply smiled and ordered another mimosa. Through the restaurant's glass wall, she could see him pacing in the courtyard, one hand gesturing animatedly as he spoke. Madison. Always Madison on Sundays now. He thought he was being clever, but after 8 weeks, patterns emerged like blood through gauze. Her own phone chimed. Daniel's name appeared with his characteristic enthusiasm. "Family Zoom June 30th at 6 p.m. Big announcement. UAA. June 30th, their anniversary." The date felt like a blade between her ribs. Julian returned, slightly flushed. Sorry about that. Board member with questions about the Q2 presentation. On a Sunday? She tilted her head with perfect curiosity. You know how it is. Big earnings call coming up. He reached for her hand. But, hey, June 30th is going to be huge. The presentation and then dinner at Gary Danko for our anniversary. 35 years, Jules. She squeezed his fingers, memorizing the pressure. 35 years, she repeated. The first Thursday of June found her at Blue Bottle Coffee in Pacific Heights, watching Daniel bounce in his chair like he was 12 again, not 28. He'd asked her to meet him alone. Just us, Mom. I need your advice. And she'd known what was coming before he even opened the small velvet box. 2 carats, he said proudly, tilting the ring so the diamond caught the afternoon light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Madison doesn't know I know, but she's been looking at rings online. Screenshot history doesn't lie. Juliet studied the solitaire, its facets throwing tiny rainbows across the marble table. Such a pure stone for such an impure situation. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Dad helped me pick it out. Daniel's face glowed with joy that made her stomach churn. He said the classic solitaire never goes out of style. Like you guys. Classic, timeless. She lifted her coffee cup to hide her expression, gripping it hard enough that her knuckles went white. Your father has always had good taste. He suggested I do it on the family Zoom call. That way, Grandma and Grandpa can watch from Boston, plus Madison's parents in Seattle. Daniel leaned forward conspiratorially. June 30th, 6 o'clock, right after Dad's big board presentation. He says it'll be the perfect cap to a perfect day. The coffee turned to acid in her throat. That's wonderful. And Madison? How are things? Daniel's smile flickered. Better. So much better. You know, it's weird. We started having problems around Dad's birthday last year. I thought we were done. But these last 2 months, even though she's been working late Tuesdays and Thursdays, she seems more committed somehow. Tuesdays and Thursdays. Juliet filed that away with all the other pieces. Sometimes people need space to realize what they want. That's exactly what Dad said. Daniel's trust was absolute, innocent as the diamond in its box. He talks to her at their sessions, you know, the mentorship thing at Baytech. He says she mentions me all the time. She's just scared of commitment because her parents divorced. Your father's always been good at reading people, Juliet said, the lie smooth as silk. Daniel reached across the table and took her hand. Mom, do you think people can change? Like really become better versions of themselves? She looked at her son, her beautiful, trusting son, and felt something inside her turn to ice. I think people show you exactly who they are. We just have to be brave enough to see it. Tuesday afternoon, while Julian was at the office preparing for what he'd called the most important month of my career, Juliet stood outside his home office door with her hand on the knob. He'd started locking it recently, after she'd found the pink hoodie, but locks were only obstacles if you didn't know the combination. Their anniversary date. He'd used it for everything since they'd gotten married, too sentimental to change it even for his affair. The lock clicked open. His computer woke with a touch of the mouse. Password, Jules Forever, 1986. She almost laughed at the irony. The Baytech calendar filled the screen in corporate blue and white. June 30th, 3 p.m., Q2 earnings call. The participant list scrolled on and on. Board members, major shareholders, institutional investors. Over 100 people who controlled Julian's future. A draft email sat open in another tab, addressed to Madison. After this promotion to Senior VP, I'll have the leverage to bring you up with me. SVP by December, I promise. Then we can go anywhere. New York, London, wherever you want. Just a little more patience, baby. Baby. He'd never called Juliet baby, not even when they were young. She photographed everything with clinical precision, then navigated to his notes app. His presentation outline filled the screen, revenue projections, strategic initiatives, 5-year growth plans. At the bottom, in bold, this presentation will cement my legacy at Baytech. Legacy. She wondered what kind of legacy he'd prefer, the executive who destroyed his company's credibility, or the husband who destroyed his family for a pink hoodie. Her phone buzzed. Mrs. Kim. Free this evening? I have something that might interest you. Friday evening at Mrs. Kim's apartment felt like entering a different world. The retired Google engineer had transformed her second bedroom into what she called her workshop, i3 monitors, towers of hardware, cables sorted with the precision of a surgeon's tools. In coding, Mrs. Kim said, pouring tea with steady hands, we call it elegant when one solution solves multiple problems. 2 birds, 1 stone, Juliet replied. Mrs. Kim smiled, her lined face crinkling. Exactly. Now, you mentioned needing to share some files during a video call? For the next 2 hours, Mrs. Kim walked her through the tools of digital warfare. Screen sharing accidents that could override presenter controls, autoplay settings that would cue videos sequentially, VPN configurations that would make IP tracking impossible, browser extensions that could hijack a Zoom call for precious seconds. The key, Mrs. Kim explained, fingers flying across the keyboard, is preparation, multiple fail-safes. If one method fails, you have 5 more ready. She handed Juliet a USB drive labeled simply Justice Tools. I never asked what this is for, Mrs. Kim said quietly, but my husband was betrayed by his business partner once. 40 years of friendship, destroyed for money. I understand the need for balance. Juliet pocketed the drive. How did it end? With your husband? The partner went to prison for embezzlement. My husband got the company. Mrs. Kim's smile was sharp as code. But the real victory was the security footage of him crying in the courtroom. I still watch it sometimes. Make it count, Juliet. You only get one chance to do it right. Late Tuesday night, alone with the truth, Juliet sat in the dark office listening to the latest recording. She'd found it by accident, searching for a conversation from earlier that day. But this was from last night, June 14th, 11:47 p.m. Julian must have pocket-dialed while with Madison. Madison's voice breathless. After Danny proposes, we'll have the perfect cover story for being together. Julian's response, calculated. Let him marry you. You'll be family. No one suspects family at company events. You're evil. Madison laughed, the sound like breaking glass. He's so eager to please. He'll never notice when you need me for overtime. The Morrison men, Madison continued, her voice turning cruel. One pays the bills, one plays house. It's perfect. Juliet reached for the wastebasket just in time, her body rejecting what her mind couldn't process. She heaved until nothing remained, then sat back, wiping her mouth with shaking hands. The recording continued. She heard rustling, then Julian's voice, soft and intimate. I love you. 3 words, 8 letters. He hadn't said them to Juliet in years. She turned back to the computer with mechanical precision. 2 new folders appeared on her desktop. Board meeting bomb and proposal devastation. She began sorting the evidence with the efficiency of an assassin loading bullets. The worst recordings, the most damaging emails, the credit card statements showing $47,000 spent on Madison, every piece of ammunition organized and ready. 73 recordings total now, photos of them entering the Ritz-Carlton on 12 separate occasions, screenshots of their shared cloud folder, including intimate photos Madison had saved with labels like My Real Man and Worth the Wait. June 30th would be many things. Julian's triumph at Baytech, Daniel's engagement to Madison, their 35th wedding anniversary. Juliet opened her calendar and created a single entry for that date, Independence Day. Then she pulled out her phone and did something she hadn't done in years. She took a selfie. Not smiling, not posing, just her face illuminated by the computer screen's cold blue glow. Her eyes looked like a stranger's, clear and sharp as winter stars. She wanted to remember this moment, this face, the last photograph of the woman she'd been before she became someone who could destroy everything without flinching. The woman in the photo looked back at her with eyes that held no mercy, no doubt, no fear. She liked her. Outside, San Francisco slept under its blanket of fog. In 15 days, the fog would lift, and everyone would see clearly for the first time. The perfect storm was coming, and Juliet Morrison, wife, mother, fool, would be its architect. She closed the laptop and stood in the darkness, feeling the weight of the USB drive in her pocket. Mrs. Kim was right. You only get one chance to do it right. And on June 30th at 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. exactly, she would take her shot. The house settled around her with familiar creaks and sighs. Upstairs, Julian slept peacefully, probably dreaming of his promotion, his mistress, his perfectly orchestrated life. Let him dream. In 15 days, she would wake him up. She climbed the stairs slowly, each step measured and deliberate. At the bedroom door, she paused. Inside, she could hear Julian's steady breathing, the same rhythm she'd fallen asleep to for 35 years. She opened the door silently and stood watching him in the darkness. He looked older in sleep, vulnerable in a way he never allowed himself to be while awake. For a moment, she felt the ghost of what might have been pity. Then she remembered Madison's laugh, Daniel's trusting eyes, the pink hoodie that started it all. She crossed to her side of the bed and lay down carefully, staring at the ceiling. Beside her, Julian stirred but didn't wake. His hand moved across the space between them, seeking her warmth in his sleep, muscle memory from decades of marriage. She let him find her hand but didn't close her fingers around his. Instead, she lay perfectly still, counting his breaths, memorizing this last pretense of peace. In 15 days, this bed, this house, this life would be evidence in a story neither of them had meant to write. But every story needs an ending. And Juliet Morrison, the woman she was becoming, would make sure theirs was unforgettable. The fog pressed against the windows like the whole world was holding its breath, waiting, like her, for June 30th. The last day of June arrived with unusual warmth, one of those rare San Francisco mornings when the fog stayed away and the sun promised to shine all day. Juliet Morrison stood in her kitchen at 6:30, methodically preparing Eggs Benedict, Julian's favorite breakfast. Her movements were precise, automatic, the practiced choreography of 35 years of marriage. But this morning, she moved with a different purpose. This would be the last breakfast she would ever make for him. Julian appeared in the doorway, already dressed in his best navy suit, the one that brought out his silver hair. He was checking his phone, scrolling through emails, his mind already at the office. He didn't kiss her good morning. He didn't mention their anniversary. There were no flowers on the counter, no card propped against the coffee maker. 35 years, and he had forgotten completely. "Smells wonderful," he said absently, still staring at his screen as he sat down. Juliet set the plate before him, the hollandaise sauce perfect, the Canadian bacon crisp. She had made this dish hundreds of times, but never with such deliberate care. Everything today had to be perfect, just not in the way Julian expected. "Big presentation today," Julian said between bites, finally looking up. 3 o'clock. The entire board plus major investors. Over 100 people confirmed. This quarter's numbers are going to blow them away. 47% growth. This presentation will change everything for us, Juliet. "I'm sure it will," Juliet replied, pouring his coffee exactly how he liked it. 2 sugars, no cream. Her voice was steady, neutral. She had become very good at keeping her voice neutral. Her phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. "Today's the day." "Ring is perfect. She'll say yes, right?" "I'm so nervous, Mom. 6 o'clock proposal party. You and Dad will be on Zoom?" Juliet typed back, "Everything will work out exactly as it should, sweetheart." She watched Julian eat, observed the confident tilt of his jaw, the way he assumed the world would continue to bend to his will. Last night, while he slept off his wine, she had installed Mrs. Kim's USB drive into his laptop. Such a small thing, barely the size of her thumbnail, but it would change everything. The technical details were beyond her understanding, something about remote access and screen share protocols. But Mrs. Kim had assured her it would work flawlessly. "You seem calm," Julian observed, finally noticing her. Usually you're fussing about anniversary plans by now. So he did remember. He simply didn't care enough to act on it. I thought we might do something different this year, Juliet said, walking to the sink. With her back to him, she slipped off her wedding ring and placed it in the small ceramic dish by the window. The band left a pale indent on her finger, a ghost of 35 years. Julian was back on his phone. Whatever you want, dear. Just nothing tonight. I'll probably need to take the team out for drinks after the presentation. You understand? Of course I understand. She turned back to face him, memorizing this last moment of his oblivious confidence. Good luck with your presentation, darling. She kissed his cheek, a gesture so routine he barely acknowledged it. He left at 7:15, his laptop bag slung over his shoulder, already making calls as he walked to his Tesla. Juliet stood at the window and watched him drive away. Then she went upstairs and began packing Daniel's childhood things, the items she couldn't leave behind. Photo albums from when he was young, his first stethoscope from the toy doctor kit, the Mother's Day cards made with construction paper and too much glue, the remnants of the time when they had been a real family. As the afternoon sun blazed through her office windows, Juliet sat before her laptop, Earl Grey, cooling beside her. It was 2:58. In 2 minutes, Julian would begin his presentation that would indeed change everything, just not how he imagined. She had a second laptop open beside her, logged into the family Zoom under a generic username, camera off. Daniel's proposal party was scheduled for 6. Both destructions would be complete before sunset. She opened the board meeting link. Over 100 participants were already logged in, their names a roster of Silicon Valley power. Julian's face appeared, confident and commanding in the presenter's box. Behind him, the Baytech logo gleamed. Good afternoon, everyone, Julian began, his voice carrying that particular tone of executive authority he had perfected. I'm thrilled to report that this quarter represents a watershed moment for Baytech. Our revenues are up 47% year over year. Slide 1 appeared, impressive graphs trending upward. Slide 2, market penetration statistics. Then Julian clicked for Slide 3, the financial projections that would secure his legacy. But Slide 3 never appeared. Instead, the screen filled with a video, crystal clear, unmistakable. Madison Chen in her pink hoodie, the one she'd worn to the family barbecue, the one Juliet had found in Julian's car. But she wasn't at a barbecue. She was in Julian's office after hours sitting on his desk, and Julian was standing between her knees, his hands in her hair, their kiss deep and hungry. The audio was perfect, Madison's voice filling the speakers of over 100 devices. Danny's too boring. His father knows how to touch a woman. The Zoom chat exploded. Julian was frantically clicking, his face cycling through confusion, recognition, and terror. Technical difficulty, Ethis is, Isomiwan's hacked, But Mrs. Kim's program was relentless. The video switched to financial records, $47,000 in gifts to Madison Chen, jewelry receipts, hotel bookings, a lease for an apartment in Madison's name, then another video clip. Madison's voice again. Let him marry me. It'll be the perfect cover for us. Danny's too stupid to notice anything. The board chair's voice cut through the chaos. Mr. Morrison, you are terminated effective immediately. Security will escort you from the building. Julian's face was crimson, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly. Someone was shouting about lawyers. Another voice mentioned the SEC. The presenter box went black. Someone had forcibly removed Julian from the meeting. Juliet sipped her tea and switched her attention to the second laptop. In 3 hours, the second act would begin. As evening shadows grew long, Juliet positioned herself in the living room with her laptop. The family Zoom was filling up. Daniel's grandparents, cousins from both sides, a few close friends. 12 people in total, all ready to celebrate Daniel's proposal. Madison was there, her camera on, wearing a white sundress that Juliet recognized. Julian had bought it for her last month. Daniel appeared, his nervous smile bright against the break room walls of UCSF. The engagement ring was visible in its box beside him. Juliet's heart broke a little seeing his hopeful face, but this was necessary. Better he learn the truth now than live a lie for 35 years. "Hi, everyone," Daniel began, his voice shaking slightly. "Thank you all for being here. Madison, 2 years ago, I lost you through my own stupidity, but you gave me another chance, and..." The screen share activated. Daniel hadn't triggered it. His face appeared confused as his control was overridden. The screen split. On one side, Julian and Madison kissing passionately in what was clearly Julian's home office. The timestamp showed last Tuesday, when Daniel had been working a 36-hour shift. The audio overlay began, Madison's voice, clear and cruel. "Your son thinks love is about sharing Netflix passwords and bringing me flowers. He has no idea what a woman really needs." Julian's voice responded, "He's always been weak. Too much like his mother." Daniel's face transformed. Confusion became recognition. Recognition became a horror so profound that several family members gasped. The ring box fell from his trembling hands. Madison's camera was shaking. "Danny, I can explain. Ethis isn't, But the program continued its merciless revelation. Another clip. Julian telling Madison, "I love you," while showing her Daniel's proposal plans. The date stamp, June 14th, 2 weeks ago. Daniel was hyperventilating. "Dad?" D-A-D question mark. His voice cracked like a teenager's. You encouraged me to propose while you were, oh God, I'm going to be sick." His grandmother was screaming. His grandfather was cursing in Portuguese. Madison's camera went black, her username vanishing from the participant list. Daniel looked directly into the camera, directly at his mother. His face was destroyed, tears streaming. "Mom, did you know?" "I'm coming to you, sweetheart," Juliet said, already standing, car keys in hand. In the harsh hospital lights, Juliet held her son as he sobbed. His colleagues had given him a sedative after finding him in a complete panic attack in the break room. The engagement ring had been left on the floor, the proposal plan torn to pieces. "How long?" Daniel asked, his voice raw. "How long were they?" 8 weeks that I know of," Juliet answered, stroking his hair like she had when he was small. "I needed proof. I needed to be sure. Why didn't you tell me?" "Would you have believed me? You love her. You loved them both." Daniel's phone was buzzing constantly. He had 47 missed calls from Julian, 12 from Madison before she'd deleted her accounts entirely. A news alert popped up. Baytech CEO terminated after Zoom scandal goes viral. "Was any of it real?" Daniel asked. "My whole life, was any of it real?" "You were real," Juliet said firmly. "Your achievements, your compassion, your dedication to healing, all of that is real. Your father was real once before he decided his ego mattered more than his family." Another alert. Hashtag Morrison scandal was trending in the Bay Area. Someone had screen recorded the board meeting and posted it online. The internet was already dissecting every frame. "I can't go back to that house," Daniel said. "Then we won't. We'll go anywhere else." As June became July, Juliet stood in the doorway of the Pacific Heights house for the last time. Julian was waiting in the living room, drunk, his tie undone, his career in ashes. The house smelled of scotch and desperation. "You vindictive bitch," he said without preamble. "Happy anniversary, Julian." She set down the folder she was carrying, divorce papers, dated 2 weeks ago. Her lawyer had been thorough. The financial separation was already complete. The accounts divided, her future secured. "You destroyed everything," Julian raged, standing unsteadily. "My career, our son." "I destroyed nothing," Juliet interrupted. "I simply showed everyone the truth. You destroyed yourself." She pulled the pink hoodie from her bag and threw it at him. It landed at his feet like a flag of surrender. "Your trophy. Keep it." "The house is yours. I never want to see it again." Julian's rage crumbled into something pathetic. "We can work through this. Couples therapy." Juliet laughed, the first genuine emotion she had shown. It was bitter and free and absolutely final. "Where will you go?" he asked. Anywhere you've never been." She turned to leave, then paused. "The movers come tomorrow for my things. Daniel and I leave tonight. Don't try to contact us." Juliet stood in that doorway for one last moment, looking at the wreckage of the man she had once loved, the house she had once cherished, the life she had once believed in. Behind her, Julian sat among the ruins of his arrogance, career ended, reputation destroyed, family obliterated. His precious pink trophy lay crumpled at his feet. In her hand, she held two things: car keys and Daniel's hospital discharge papers. Her son was waiting in the car, still in his scrubs, eyes red and swollen, the engagement ring abandoned on the break room floor where it would be found by janitors and thrown away. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. The last sound she heard from her old life was Julian's phone buzzing with another reporter's call. The first sound of her new life was Daniel's voice, broken but grateful. "Mom, can we just drive?" She started the car. "Yes, sweetheart, let's go anywhere but here." As they pulled away from Pacific Heights, Juliet noticed something she hadn't seen in years. Her hands weren't shaking. They were perfectly steady, finally, mercifully free. October arrived with its golden light, painting the Portland waterfront in shades of amber and rust. Juliet Morrison stood behind the gleaming service window of her food truck, watching the morning crowd gather for the first day of the Portland Food Truck Festival. The Airstream's polished silver skin caught the sun, making Juliet's freedom shimmer in elegant script along its side. "Order up!" Daniel called from behind her, sliding a plate of Liberation lamb skewers across the prep counter. His matching apron read, "Seuss of Freedom," in the same flowing script, a joke Sarah had suggested that had stuck. 3 months had transformed him, too. The hollow cheeks had filled out, the haunted look replaced by something quieter but genuine. Their first customer was a woman in her 70s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed. She ordered one of everything on the menu: Liberation lamb skewers, Independence Day sliders, New Beginning noodles, and Second Chapter churros. When Juliet tallied the total, the woman handed her a $100 bill. "Keep the change," she said, her voice carrying a weight of understanding. "I know freedom when I taste it." The line grew quickly, stretching past the other food trucks, 50 people deep by noon. Mother and son moved in perfect synchronization, no words needed, Daniel plating, Juliet serving, both dancing around each other in the narrow space they'd learned to navigate like a second home. They sold out in 3 hours. "Mom," Daniel said as they closed the window, both collapsing on the truck's back steps, "I never knew you could cook like this." Juliet laughed, the sound carrying across the waterfront. "I learned on YouTube. 3 months of videos, every night after driving." He shook his head in amazement. "Dad never knew who you really were, did he?" "Neither did I," she admitted, watching the Portland skyline soften in the afternoon haze. "Neither did I." That night she posted to Instagram, "Day 1 of our new life. Portland, you're beautiful. Tomorrow we feed more souls." The photo showed their empty truck, sold-out signs on every item. Within an hour, 5,000 likes. A warm Tuesday in Santa Barbara brought unexpected virality. The Beach Food Festival stretched along the sand, October sunshine turning the ocean into hammered gold. Juliet was preparing the lunch rush when a young woman with purple hair and a professional camera approached. "You're Juliet Morrison," the woman said. It wasn't a question. "I'm Foodie Justice. 2 million followers. I've been following your story." Juliet's hands stilled on the lamb she was seasoning. Beside her, Daniel tensed. "Tell me about the name," the blogger said, camera rolling. "Juliet's freedom." Juliet looked at her son, who nodded almost imperceptibly. She turned back to the camera. "I spent 35 years in a cage I didn't know existed," she said simply. "Golden bars, comfortable padding, but still a cage." "We both did," Daniel added, stepping into frame. "Different cages, same prison." The interview lasted 10 minutes. The blogger posted it that afternoon with the title, "From Betrayal to Breakfast Burritos, a Mother-Son Phoenix Story." By evening, Juliet's Instagram had gained 10,000 followers. "You're the Zoom revenge mom!" a customer exclaimed the next morning, eyes wide with recognition. I prefer the Freedom Chef, Juliet replied, handing over their order with a smile that had become her signature, eye warm but with steel underneath. That afternoon, Sarah arrived. Daniel had been nervous all morning, checking his phone, adjusting his apron repeatedly. When the petite woman with kind eyes and scrubs under her jacket appeared, his entire demeanor shifted. "You must be Juliet," Sarah said, extending her hand. "Daniel told me everything. You're incredible." Juliet studied the young woman, a pediatric nurse with gentle hands and a genuine smile. Nothing like Madison's calculated perfection. When Sarah jumped in to help during the dinner rush without being asked, when she and Daniel worked together with easy affection, Juliet felt something in her chest unclench. Later, as they cleaned up, she heard Daniel laugh, really laugh, for the first time since June. The sound was worth every mile they'd driven. An autumn evening in wine country changed everything. The Napa Food and Wine Festival had been their most successful event yet, but it was afterward, sitting on the truck's steps with wine in paper cups, that the real breakthrough came. "I knew something was off with Madison," Daniel said suddenly, staring at the vineyard lights dotting the hills. Even before, Juliet waited, having learned that silence often invited more truth than questions. "But I wanted the idea of her more than her," he continued. "The successful girlfriend, the perfect life, the image." He turned to his mother. "Just like you wanted the idea of Dad." The parallel hit Juliet like a physical blow. "I was sleepwalking through my own life," she admitted. 35 years of sleepwalking. "Do you regret how you did it?" Daniel asked. "The Zoom call?" Juliet considered the question, swirling the wine in her cup. "I regret not doing it sooner. I regret the years I lost. But the way I did it?" She met his eyes. "That was the first truly honest moment of my marriage." Daniel nodded, then smiled slightly. "I got into UCSF's psychiatric nursing program." "Daniel, that's wonderful, but I thought—" "I want to help people in crisis," he interrupted. "I've been there. Rock bottom, betrayed, lost. I know what it feels like when your whole world reveals itself as a lie." They toasted with their paper cups. "To waking up," Juliet said. "To waking up," Daniel echoed. From that night forward, they established a tradition. Every evening, no matter how tired, they would share one thing they were grateful for. Small things, usually. The way Sarah smiled. A perfect batch of churros. A customer who said the food made them brave. Halloween Eve in San Francisco arrived with morning fog and irony. They'd secured a spot at the Ferry Building Saturday Market, right where Julian used to buy his morning coffee from the artisan roaster. Juliet had hesitated when she realized the location, but Daniel had been firm. "We're not hiding from anything anymore," he'd said. Word had spread about their return. The line formed before they'd even finished setup. Juliet was in her rhythm, serving customer after customer, when a familiar figure approached the window. Julian looked like a ghost of his former self. The expensive suit was gone, replaced by jeans and a faded sweater. His face, once pompous with success, had hollowed. He approached slowly, as if expecting to be turned away. The crowd seemed to hold its breath. Daniel started to move toward the window, but Juliet placed a gentle hand on his arm. She ladled a cup of the day's special, second chance soup and handed it through the window. Julian looked at the cup, then at her face. His mouth opened, perhaps to speak, but no words came. Instead, he placed something on the counter, his wedding ring, and walked away without looking back. Juliet served the next customer immediately, as if nothing had happened. The ring sat on the counter like a small gold period at the end of a very long sentence. "That took courage," Daniel said quietly. "Dad walking up." "Everyone deserves soup," Juliet replied, her voice steady. Mrs. Kim appeared an hour later, her eyes twinkling with knowing satisfaction. She ordered the liberation lamb with a smile that said everything. "You did it perfectly," she whispered as Juliet handed her the order. By day's end, they'd made $5,000, their best day ever. As they counted the money, Daniel looked up. "Let's franchise this," he said suddenly. "Juliet's freedom trucks everywhere, for everyone starting over." Juliet stared at her son, seeing the businessman he could have been, the entrepreneur emerging from the ashes. You really think we could? Mom, we have 100,000 followers. We have a story. We have recipes that taste like hope. Yeah, I think we could. As Halloween night embraced the coast, they parked the truck on the great highway facing Ocean Beach. The sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, perfect for the holiday. They served free hot chocolate to trick-or-treaters, Juliet dressed as a chef, which hardly counted as a costume anymore, Daniel wearing scrubs with a stethoscope, his future self. Sarah was there, helping serve, wearing butterfly wings that caught the dying light. She fit into their rhythm as if she'd always been there, laughing with Daniel, chatting easily with customers, understanding without being told when to step back and let mother and son have their moments. We're live, Daniel announced, setting up his phone for Instagram. 100,000 people tuned in to watch them serve cocoa to costumed children, to hear Juliet tell the story of each menu item, to witness what rebuilding looked like in real time. Mom's writing a cookbook, Daniel announced to the camera. It's called Recipes for Starting Over. The comments exploded. 3 publishers had already reached out, but Juliet hadn't told anyone except Daniel and Sarah. As the evening wound down, Juliet caught her reflection in the truck's polished surface. The woman looking back wasn't the gallery curator of 6 months ago, wasn't the betrayed wife who destroyed her husband on Zoom, wasn't even the angry woman who'd driven away in June. Gray streaked her hair more prominently now, laugh lines had deepened around her eyes, her hands showed the calluses of real work. But her eyes were alive. Her shoulders were straight, unbowed by the weight of pretense. Her smile, when a last trick-or-treater ran up for cocoa, was genuine all the way through. They packed up as fog rolled in from the Pacific. Daniel took the driver's seat, Sarah beside him with her phone out, planning their route to the next festival in Los Angeles. Juliet sat in the back, tallying receipts, making notes for tomorrow's specials. Her phone buzzed. Julian, I'm sorry. Be happy. She stared at the message for a moment, then deleted it without replying. Some conversations were finished. Where to next, chef? Daniel called back as he started the engine. Wherever we haven't been, she answered. The truck pulled away from Ocean Beach, its taillights disappearing into the coastal fog. On its side, Juliet's freedom glowed in the darkness, a beacon for anyone who'd ever needed to start over. Inside, Juliet opened her notebook to a fresh page. Tomorrow's special would be Halloween hangover hash, for when the masks come off. She smiled at the name, then began writing the recipe, her hands steady as the truck rolled south. Her wedding ring had been sold months ago, the money donated to a women's shelter. Her pearl earrings had gone to charity. The pink hoodie was landfill history. But her hands, steady now on the prep counter as Daniel drove toward Los Angeles, toward the next festival, toward whatever came next, her hands were finally, completely free. She pulled out her journal, the one she'd started the day they left San Francisco. October 31st, 2021, she wrote. I am 62 years old. I own a food truck, a broken heart that's healing, and a son who calls me his hero. I have never been happier. The secret ingredient was never revenge. It was choosing myself. Her phone showed a notification. At Foodie Justice had tagged her in a new post. The documentary offer was real. The cookbook advance had been approved. 3 franchising inquiries waited in her inbox. But all of that could wait until tomorrow. Tonight, she had Halloween candy to sort, Daniel's payment for driving, Sarah's laughter to enjoy, and miles of highway stretching ahead like a promise. At 11:47 p.m., Juliet's Freedom posted, Thank you for following our journey. Tomorrow we're in LA. Order the Liberation Lamb. It's made with 100% grass-fed freedom. UETM. New. Chapter. Mom. And son. Food heals. Within minutes, 10,000 likes. The first comment stopped her cold. You saved my life. I'm leaving him tomorrow. Juliet typed back, Order extra churros. You'll need the sugar for strength. Then she put the phone away and pulled out ingredients for tomorrow's prep. Sarah was teaching Daniel a card game in the front seats. The generator hummed. The refrigerator clicked on. Normal sounds of a life that had become extraordinary, not through fame or money or even revenge, but through the simple act of choosing freedom. The truck rolled through the night, past Pacifica, past Half Moon Bay, past all the places she'd driven in tears just months before. But now the tears were gone, replaced by something better. Purpose. In her notebook, she sketched the cover of her cookbook. A food truck parked at the edge of the world, serving hope one plate at a time. The dedication was already written. For everyone who's ever been told they're too old to start over. You're not. Trust me. I know. Daniel called back. Mom, there's a message from someone at Food Network. Tomorrow, she said. Everything can wait until tomorrow. Even Food Network? Especially Food Network. Tonight we're just us. A family that serves food from a truck. A family, Daniel repeated, and she heard the smile in his voice. Outside, California rushed by in darkness. Inside, 3 people who'd found each other in the wreckage of other lives shared chocolate and stories, and the kind of quiet contentment that only comes after surviving a storm. Juliet's freedom rolled on through the night, toward Los Angeles, toward the future, toward 1,000 plates of liberation lamb yet to be served. The woman who'd spent 35 years in a beautiful prison had finally learned the truth. The door had never been locked. She'd just been afraid to turn the handle. Now, with her son healed and healing others, with a business built on authenticity, with every mile taking them further from who they used to be, Juliet Morrison was exactly where she belonged. Free. The last entry in her journal that night was simple. Chapter closed. Book closed. New story beginning. And this time, I'm writing it myself. Dawn would bring Los Angeles, new customers, new challenges. But tonight, in the space between what was and what would be, a mother and son had found their way home. Not to a place, but to themselves. And that, Juliet thought as sleep finally claimed her, was the best revenge of all.